will be chairing the meeting tonight, so be patient with me, okay? We'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business is to accept or amend the agenda. I do have one additional agenda item, F, and that is the Aaron Roby resignation. She's elementary parapro. So that'll be item F. Anybody else have any changes, additions to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
Is Scott presenting the budget or the audit?
What's that?
Is Scott Hunter presenting the budget or the audit?
That would be the audit.
The audit, yes.
It says budget.
I didn't bring the budget.
Me either, so.
We were hoping you did. Good catch, good catch. So with that clarification, anything else on the agenda? Not entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there
Support.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. Public comment. Appears to be none of that. So with that, I'll introduce Scott Hunter. Scott has been our auditor here for several years, probably his last this year.
Probably, made some minor involvement
He's
next
kind of
year.
easing off to the sunset, so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna just hit a couple points, and summarize it. Let's start on page 14. We probably don't spend a lot of time on this statement. It's a statement of net position. Guys, one thing to point out, we've never actually had a positive net position before. So it's the first time we're starting to see some other schools as well. We actually have a positive net position. And that's basically because, every year the state comes out and says, well, this massive pension liability, they'll tell us here's how much you have to book as a liability McBain. Between the school doing well financially and that pension liability going down and, different improvements we made, you can see we actually show a positive net position of $252,000. So like I said, we audited about 50 school districts, and this is the first year we're starting to see some actual schools that have that. So it's encouraging. That obviously can change with how much is funded into the pension plan and the investments, but I would like to think next year should have an additional improvement as well, because I think the September 30th is when they do their actuarial report. So with that said, I'm going to jump over to page 20. And this is kind of how the different funds came out and how we budget, and it shows the first column. You can see the general fund. It had an increase of $493,213, bringing their ending fund balance at the end of the year just over $3 million. That's an improvement of about $200,000 from a year ago. A year ago we had an increase of $292,000. So that amounts to about 20% percentage of our expenditures. So, which is good. I mean, you kind of want to be at least at that level, just between the uncertainty in the funding, future funding and that, and then we know a lot of our federal grants that we received in the last 2 years are going away. So it's probably good that we've set ourselves up to with a nice fund balance. The next two columns are new funds this year. We have our 2023 capital project fund, which that's the fund that handles our bond proceeds and expenditures. So you can see we still had about 1.2 million of the bond money that was not spent at the end of the year. And then the next fund over is our sinking fund, and that is also new this year, which we have 653,000 at the end of the year. The main thing on that is just, and we talked about this at our meeting the other day, it's just, maybe when in doubt, if you have a question on if that's something that can be spent out of that fund, make sure you reach out to the state, because they're very restrictive on the type of things that they want to spend out of that sinking fund. Moving across the page, we have our capital project fund that is not related to bonds. So we have 621,000 there, and that's really made up of money that's been transferred over from the general fund over the years. Then our Learning Center Capital Project Fund, we finally wrapped that up. That took a few years longer than I probably planned, but that fund will not be there next year. We did spend the remaining $8,100 that was in that fund. Our food service fund had an increase of $20,787 compared to $37,000 last year. So they're still have quite a bit of fund balance. And then our other non-major governmental funds had an increase of $73,000, and that's made up of our library, which had an increase of about $12,000, which is pretty consistent with what they've been in the past. Our new debt fund that we have our debt tax revenue going into, that has an ending, had an increase of $70,000. And then our student activities fund had a drop of $9,800, and that's just kind of depending on fundraisers and trips and things like that. As I mentioned briefly, the one thing to point out is on our federal revenue, we're gonna see a massive drop in that. I think we had, we went from 1.2 million last year in the general fund down to 627,000 in the 23-24 year. A lot of that has to do with there was ARPA money, there was ESSER's money, and we're seeing that come to an end. So that's probably the main thing going forward is to watch, you know, when these state grants fall off, whether it's mental health or the ESSER's, just make sure you're in a position to either offset that revenue somewhere else or watch where you're spending money related to that. Other than that, county records are in great condition again. We appreciate everything that's done at the ISD. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Scott, the pension liability, I mentioned this to Scott earlier. I thought that always appeared on our regular balance sheet. Has that changed?
No, the only place it shows up is on the statement in that position.
Okay.
And that's probably been 10 years now, 10, 12 years.
It's been a long time.
The powers that be thought it would be more appropriate to add additional statements.
Yes, we people.
Yeah.
We did have one finding.
Right, yeah, and that is in the very back. It just had to do with, we're required to have food service monitoring of the different buildings, and we had one less than we needed to. I feel like that's got been addressed and should not be a problem going forward. And that's part of our single audit process where, because we have over 750,000 of federal revenue, we have to do some of these compliance audits related to that.
So
some
going back
years
to-
it's food service, some years Title I or ESSER's.
There's been a lot of changes. I'm getting back to that unfunded pension liability again. So there's been changes in the, a lot of changes in the school contribution for that, right?
Right, well, over the years, they've kind of really ramped that up. Plus you have the market, you know, we've had a good 2 or 3 years in the market, that probably is a bigger driving force of that. And like I said, I think September 30th of this year, you know, the market was up again, so you would think that there'd be next year's report would be a good report as well.
But,
And the health insurance portion of that is fully funded now.
right, that's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
post-employment benefit
Yes.
portion, yeah,
Okay, that's fully funded now.
right.
Okay. So what would we anticipate, when will that go away?
Probably never. Well,
Yeah.
wouldn't there always be an amount on it? I mean,
Well,
there
there
always-
always
It could be, ultimately be overfunded at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't see that happening anytime soon. But yeah, there's so many, yeah, but they could drop the amount that they're putting in again, there's,
Yeah.
you know, the market could drop.
Okay,
There's
so it's
just-
always gonna be there probably, to some extent.
Unfortunately, probably. But it's just nice that we're seeing it move in that direction.
You guys have any questions for Scott? We have a motion to approve that, do we?
No, it's just what it is.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to routine matters. Item 5A, we have minutes from the September 9 board meeting. Anybody have any questions on those minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Support. Move as support to accept the minutes of September 9. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Item 5B, consider general fund invoices for payment.
Alright, I would like to make a motion to pay from the general fund checks 77918 through 78115 for $304,309.61, and from food services, check 77924 through 78115 for $56,104.75.
Support.
Motion made and supported. Any discussion? I noticed maybe 2 or 3 items in there that had to do with some lightning damage and that kind of stuff. Is that probably under our deductible?
It will.
Okay.
We're waiting on one more, waiting on some work to be completed, and then we'll
Okay.
submit it all at once.
Okay, so
We have
partially, maybe partially
$1,000
covered.
$1,000 deductible.
Right.
Okay, so some of that will come back.
Majority of it.
And that'll go into miscellaneous revenue, when those funds come
Okay.
in, so.
Sounds good, okay. Any other discussion on the invoices? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Item 6A, board president report. That's nothing tonight, I guess. Item B, superintendent report.
Yeah, just some updates for you. I know we were gonna talk about the sinking fund projects down further in the discussion, so I'll leave that for that. But just a couple of things. House center renovations, kind of updated you, but wanted to make sure that you guys were aware. We're looking at some house center renovations. Basically just modifying that room a little bit, so there's more of a waiting room and more of a nurse's room area for that. They did have contractors in this week to look at that bidding. That would all be health department funds. It would not be McBain Schools funds. They're also using DK Design for that, for their drawings, but also made sure that what they decide to do, if the health department were ever to remove themselves, or we would still be able to use that space as office space. It would still be very usable and updated. So waiting to see what those bids, I believe bids are due next Friday for that. But again, the district is pretty much removed from that, so. We did do, kind of goes along the sinking fund, I'll leave that. So one thing I wanna touch on is yellow flowers. Dennis, this is for you, okay? So I think we're still gonna go with purple, pinks, and whites. Because the yellow ones right now don't get as big and as illustrious, if you will, for that. So we are gonna do some sample yellow ones up by the library this summer, or this next spring, so we can see how they do and what they can do. But in talking with Darla and just how nice they look, but it also saved them a ton of man hours with how big those flowers were. So
Still living.
they're still living.
Very
I
nice.
know they are so beautiful.
Yeah, they're very nice, yeah.
Relay my thanks to her for her work.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, so just wanted to update you on the yellow flowers. So other things, snow days, yeah, we're talking about them already. Just one update that we have on that is our parents will still receive the phone call, text, email, Facebook update. We'll still notify 9 and 10 News and 7 and 4 News, but we're not gonna notify radio stations anymore. And to be honest with you, I never get a hold of anyone and leave voicemails and never know if they actually are played. But everyone has access to, we were thinking about grandparents that may watch kids or whatever, they can access the 9 and 10 News app or our Facebook page, or even our app, to see if we're closed or not. Feel like with everything that we're announcing, that radio stations probably don't need to be called anymore. So put that in my superintendent's report, and I'll put something out to parents as well, just so that they're aware. So that was kind of it. Biggest chunk of it will be sinking fund projects, and I'll do that under the discussion item.
All right, any other questions for the superintendent? Business manager?
Okay, all right, let's see, we have completed the bid. Taylor and I worked on that. I had in here that we were working on it, and that is the financial information database that is, that we complete, that ties out to the audit once we have our audit finalized. And so that has been all submitted to the state, and which is a good thing because we'll get our state aid this month, so. Yeah, so Taylor worked through that for her first time, and that went very well. 31 AA funding, I had on the second page of that, we are going to get some of that back, so that's good news. We won't get it until March, but we'll go from $17 up to $100 per student, so, and hopefully they will come up with a plan to get us more at some point, but that's encouraging at least. Let's see, Scott and Tammy and Taylor and I met, we do have a spent down plan for food service, even though we were kind of anticipating that we wouldn't, but with the summer food program and food costs coming in a little lower than anticipated, we have 125,500-ish that we have to spend down.
And what's the time frame for that, Liz?
They would like us to spend it down by the end of this year, but we can carry over if we need to.
Fiscal year?
Right. But the school districts don't even get officially notified until the spring, and then our plan isn't due to them until April, and but we're planning on using some of it towards food costs because we know that those are going to be high again this year, and then I think farther down the agenda is the bonus for the summer food service workers, and Tammy is working on coming up with a list of some equipment and tables, et cetera, that we're working through that. And let's see, I think that's about it. Wait, I did put something in about the transportation funding, that 22L funding, which was new funding last year. Yes, last year was our first year of getting that. The first year, they kind of came up with a way they divvied that out to districts, and now they're fine tuning that down some, and so our rider count, it tweaks some of those numbers a little bit, because there's certain students that we can't count on that any longer, and certain expenditures that we won't be able to include going forward. It'll just be educational transportation that'll count towards the calculation, so Scott, Don, and I are working through that. So.
And the students that we couldn't count, correct me if I'm wrong, were dependent on how far away they lived from the district.
That, we can't count ones that live within a mile and a half that ride the bus, and then also school of choice students. So, that's about it.
So the sheet for the bond issue and the sinking fund, those are all, looks like there's still a little bit to be spent there yet. They'll all probably all be balanced out next few months, or especially the sinking fund.
Right, and
I
Scott.
sure hope so, yes.
Yeah, we have some devices that we purchased this summer that will, once we start collecting sinking funds again, we don't have enough there yet to put all of those expenses yet into the sinking fund, but Scott has those, those numbers, but, so the balance of what's left this year, I guess you could say, would be going towards devices, and then, the plan for the money next year, and then, yeah. So yes, those are both up to date through the end of September of what we have left for
Sounds good.
cash.
All right. Any questions for Liz, or comments, or anything like that? Principals reports. David, you're always on the top of the list.
Actually, he's not right now. We're gonna do our presentation real quick
Okay.
on our data presentation. And David was kind of instrumental in helping create this, so he put the high school first. So, but I'm gonna go over a couple of slides with you here first regarding our student data. Just going over our district goals. And our goal for math is just to increase our math proficiency scores district-wide by 5% in 2026. Also implement the my MTSS and PBIS for kindergarten through 12th grade to help increase student attendance and participation during instructional practices. Also increase our ELA M-STEP by 5% by 2026. And our social emotional learning is to teach self-awareness and self-management skills to achieve school and life success. And we'll monitor that by attendance, discipline, referral, and academics. Our student count, currently, well, I shouldn't say currently because I'm sure this has changed since I put this together, but it's 1,086 students. You see that we kind of have our grade levels are all kind of coming in now pretty consistent number-wise. In the past, we had some lower than the low 50s, but now you see it's kind of evening it out with 12th grade being our lowest number in the district. And actually 7th grade being our highest at 97. Our student enrollment, you see, is kind of maintained pretty steady. You did see a little bit of a drop in 2021, but then it's starting to climb back up for 23-24. But a lot of districts are unable to say this, so this is a point of pride, is that our enrollment has stayed really steady throughout since 2014. Our school of choice numbers, this year we added 43 students that are school of choice, with kindergarten being the most at 22. And then you see we did not accept any school of choice students for 6th through 8th grade because of our numbers of our middle school students. And then we had 6 for 9th through 12th grade students.
So the 43, is that a net increase?
That is,
That's
yeah.
a net increase.
Well, no, I can't answer that. I don't know, on this, I don't know how many kids have left. We'll look
Okay,
at
that's
our
it,
student
okay.
count.
These are just the
Yeah.
new ones, okay.
But I do have a couple slides on here to show you. Here's our school of choice students entering and leaving. The orange, I believe that's orange, is entering into the district. And then the blue line down here is students leaving the district. So we do have students leaving the district as well. Going in, our choice, school of choice numbers coming in and staying are quite consistent, but we see that through elementary school and the enrollment in kindergarten.
And when does the window close? It's closed, I'm assuming.
It's closed,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
It closed before school started.
So we have about is that about 280 or 270
Yeah,
something?
right around there.
And we have, what, maybe 60 going out or 70?
Yep. This will also kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown. You see the orange is students coming in, and the blue are students going out. So you see we have a lot of students going out from Cadillac, or to Cadillac into Lake City. Part of the draw to Lake City schools is their virtual school. We've had quite a few high school students, school of choice back or out to Lake City for that.
I was gonna ask what reason they have for going out, that's a big,
And some of
is
them,
that true for Cadillac also?
you know, with Cadillac, I think that varies. It can vary because parents work in Cadillac, kids have always been in Cadillac. But to be truthful too, parents can sometimes get upset with a district and pull their kids for that reason and think that they're gonna have a better experience in another school district, which we hope that they do, if it's not been a good experience here. But that's also how we've received students as well from this. So remember that when you see these numbers, you're a school of choice student in kindergarten, but technically, if you enroll in kindergarten in school of choice, your first grade year, you're no longer a school of choice. You don't apply anymore. You're a McBain student. But these numbers reflect kindergarten through 12th grade. Those numbers. So if you look at, if you have 22 kids entering kindergarten, you're looking at your number of enrollees through 12th grade of 240, 250 of those students. And that would be a majority of our students. When they enroll, they typically stay. And then Mr. Finstrom has the attendance for us.
All right, so following our district goals, we are keeping better track of what our attendance is. And so if you look at that monthly ADA is average daily attendance, and then from beginning a year to the end of the month listed of average daily attendance, so that we can see, are we having an epidemic, is there a dip, are we, can kind of troubleshoot before we wait till the end of the year when the results come out to try to determine, oh, there was a problem. So this also helps us track kind of the implementation of our PBIS to see that we're having a positive impact. So you can see the trend data for the last 3 years for each month. We are up considerably when you start comparing to, especially for the month of August. Looking at our elementary, we continue to see a steady gain, middle school and high school. And a lot of that we do attribute to our culture and climate as we continue to grow. So we're very happy to see anytime the number is above 95% average daily attendance, the research is showing that as a school, you don't have a systemic problem if you keep above 95%. So we really target that goal, keeping the kids here, keeping them connected as they go through, because every day they're here, they're learning, every day they're not. We got a lot of makeup to do. So trying to keep those kids here. Our attendance policy being unified district-wide and the support of Just Whetstone and being very consistent with, you hit 5 days, you have a warning letter. You hit 10 days, now we're calling you in for a parent meeting with the student. At 15, Missaukee County has been very supportive through the courthouse of taking steps and following the truancy policy. And so I think now that there's more weight in the game, we're seeing that. But also with every report card, we give the parents an update of where their kids are before it even becomes a problem. We want everyone to be well aware of where they're going. So this is building by building. Next slide, we'll be looking at our historical year-to-year attendance and giving us a comparison through the state, the ISD, McBain as a whole, and then district by district as we work through that. Anything that we noted that we've done as a district, we wanted to kind of make note at the bottom to help us see, is there a trend that is improving? So when you look at it, your average daily attendance in the first part, when schools were shut down, when schools were contact tracing. If you notice in 2021, 22, there was a change in the coding. So for 2021, we contact traced, it was marked differently because they were quarantined. Now 21, 22, the state, we weren't marking the same, it counted more against the kids. So you can see that our numbers dipped, so I would say substantially, but they did across the state and the ISD as well. When we look at 2022, 23, you can see when we started implementing our attendance system, we fully implemented partway through the year. And then PBIS launched fully the beginning of 23, 24. The next number that we really want to pay attention to, because McBain historically is running at that 95% average daily attendance, is the percent of students who are chronically absent, meaning they're missing 10% of days or more. And that can be calculated if we're in school 180 days, 18 days or more, what percent of our student population is hitting in that? And you can see some pretty dramatic numbers if you look past 21, 22 because of the coding that happened there. But we are seeing some really great gains, especially if you look at our high school, to see a 5% drop in our chronically absent student population, to see about another 5% drop in our middle school and elementary. Kids don't tend to skip as much as you see in the middle school and high school because you gotta provide care for them. Middle school, high schoolers, I don't feel good, all right, stay home, I'm still going to work. So really trying to combat that as we go through. But very proud to show our overall average of 9% of our students as chronically absent, especially when we start looking at the ISD and the state numbers that are running pretty neck and neck. So as a district, the things we've implemented with our attendance policies with PBIS are definitely having a big impact on getting kids here and keeping kids here. So we keep very diligent on that, talk about it monthly so that we can keep track of where we're going. Any questions on that?
If you just look at this percentage here too, of chronically absent students, I mean, right now, McBain's at 9%, which is still, in my opinion, high. But when you look at the difference with the ISD average and the state average, it's pretty remarkable.
So when you say an absence, is that absence for any reason or unexcused absence?
So when we look at that, the state only accepts medical notes and funerals. And as morbid as it sounds, we do have to provide proof of a funeral with that, because when we get audited on our student counts, we have to prove if Johnny's gone, for a dentist, we better have a dentist note, or we cannot approve it medical, because the state does recognize there's some things you cannot control. And we're very diligent in the offices. Our AAs are phenomenal about making sure, like, hey, get us a note, get the note, have them fax it, print it, email it, take a picture of it and text it to one of us, we'll print it off, to help cover with that. But that is the only thing the state sees in their eyes as excusable, is a true medical note or a funeral. So anything else where Johnny has a fever in the morning and so we kept him home, unfortunately, we can't accept that beyond a parent excuse, but that still does count against the student's attendance record.
And the families take vacation.
Yes, a vacation still counts against their attendance, and we do appreciate when our families let us know ahead of time, hey, I got this once a lifetime trip for a week to go hiking. Awesome, when you get back, I'm gonna have a nice yellow letter for you. Your kid is typically not, but that 5 days at the beginning of the year is putting them in the chronic absent area, but we can work towards that. So there are things we can work with as we go ahead, and we do appreciate being told still what's going on. Because when we do have the attendance meetings with Jess, we look at any possible cause leading up to it. We dive into their academics, because there's some kids that, math might be a struggle, so I'm gonna be sick every math test, because the makeup's a little bit better, I get a couple more days. So we've actually discovered kids that may have a learning disability or may need extra tutoring support through the attendance, and that falls with our MTSS process as well, to make sure that we are meeting the needs and finding out the source of it, so that we can narrow it down to, is it just they're not coming, or what can we put in place? And mental health comes into a big play as well, and that's with the health department being present and our social workers, we've been able to get kids a lot of extra resources that also has reduced chronic absenteeism as we go through. But it's just nice to have that meeting, everyone at the table, to have those discussions to see what can we do as a district to get your kids here. Because the value of in-person is way, way more important than a pack of make it up and turn it in a couple days later. It just, you don't get the rich instruction.
So, the high school data, I'm starting with, the 11th grade SAT. That's the culmination of everything we do. Our juniors take this in the spring. So 2 graphs really showing the same thing, however you like to see it. But we're at 50.7%, just under state, but well over the ISD. And that's for reading, for the SAT. And then SAT math. So that's our national normed test that our juniors take. And our math outperformed ISD and state, but definitely going to continue to keep looking at that. For the next one, science. Science and social studies switch to the M step, so then that's state testing. And again, our juniors sit through 3 days of testing, SAT, the ACT work keys, and then we finish with science and social studies. So you can see how we did on both of those. I feel like science and social studies are still works in progress with the state. We still try to find out what will be on there. I just got a release from the state for social studies by grade level bands of what will be covered. So it's nice to be able to share that with teachers so they know what students will be tested on. So that's our junior testing, and that's really from last spring. And then switching over to NWEA for the high school this fall. So we do this locally. In the high school, we only do it in the fall and in the spring. I started out with reading For high school, I can do reading, so you can see there's 9th, 10th, and 11th in a row. The key is at the bottom, so the red and the orange are who we look at as students of concern, potential academic support plans, or IEP students that we can support some more. The yellow is considered average on NWEA, and then the green and the blue are above average. And then for math, I have to break it down differently. So this is math K-12, and it just means any student can take math 6th grade and above, and it's kind of a blanket math, because I have students who go to CTC and do not have a math class here at McBain. So this is the best math test we could find for them, that it kind of reviews math. And we just make sure that they take the same test in the fall and in the springs to show growth. So this is how, it's pretty much juniors that took that test. That's math K-12. And then Algebra 1, I do have mostly freshmen on that. I have a few students who perhaps are revisiting that class, so they might be in that one. But it's mostly our freshmen, and that's how they came out for the beginning of the year for Algebra 1. Algebra 2 would be sophomores that may be in an advanced track, or the juniors that are not at CTC. They would be taking the Algebra 2 test, so that's how they performed this fall. And then I end with geometry. Typically sophomores and a few freshmen that are again on that advanced track, they took the geometry assessment this fall.
Excuse me, can I ask something? I know I've asked it before. The percentage of what? I mean, when you say a 30%, what, 30% of what? What does that tell me?
So specifically which part of it? I'm
Well,
sorry.
pretty much, okay, what does 28% in the yellow category there mean?
28% of the students scored in that range there.
Okay,
And they scored in that range. To remember these questions in the past, because I always have them too.
I know, it's a lot of numbers and percentages.
It's always confused me. So does that say 28% achieved at a certain level?
That little code at the bottom, that 41st percentile to the 60th
Okay.
percentile, that's that average range on a national test that a student on that test should get. And 28% of those 72 scored in that nice average range.
Okay.
And that's content that they should know by the end of geometry.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, it has never sunk in.
The goal, Becky, right, is to take this 28% and move them to this green.
Okay.
And then the goal is to move the green to the, I don't know.
So is the blue telling me that 21% of these students achieved at the 80th level or more?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, and that means
High
that
achievers.
they've achieved 80% of their goal? Or,
No, 80th percentile, and David, please, if you can explain it better.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't say that they achieved 80% of the goal or got 80% correct, because percentiles just rank you amongst your peers, right? So it's just showing us that out of 100 peers, if I take 100 people, right, I'm somewhere in the 80 to 100 of those people scoring on that assessment. So it's based on the group that's taking the assessment too. It's based on past test results, because NWEA has this large algorithm that they use to find benchmark scores for us so that we can kind of judge how students are doing. So when they get a score, I can look at a benchmark score that NWEA has put out to say this would be average for students at this grade level and in this content area. So there's a lot of math going on. There's a lot of, I always tell my staff, there's a lot of statistics going on that I don't necessarily understand, but we can look at that and go, okay, who's doing really well and would benefit from maybe some acceleration? Who is maybe in the orange and the red, and we need to look at what other additional services do they need for support? And are they getting all of the services that they might require? And then we dig into it more too as staff to look at, it'll break it down by like groupings of standards. In reading, it's like literature, informational vocabulary, so we can look to it, how did they score collectively in those areas, and then tailor our instruction to that.
How do you know if you have a fifth grade class of 80 students, how do you know what percent of those kids are getting it? I mean, there's goals for a fifth grade class. There's levels where they should be at. How do you know what percent of those kids are getting that?
So this is really.
Is that in here somewhere?
Yes, and there's lots of reports in NWA where we can go by student and break it down to see what they are getting and where they need support.
Okay.
But we really treat this as a screener, just a thermometer test to see how our kids doing, how is our instruction going, is our instruction meeting their needs. And so if we have grade levels or areas where it's dipping a little bit, then we talk in our data meetings that we all have about what do we do about that. Where's the dip? How do we address that?
Molly gets a sheet home that explains how she did and where she places in each category.
Oh,
So
okay.
as a parent, we know where our student's at. And if she needs help, Mom and I can't give it to her because
Yeah.
And most of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wisner, is your classroom teachers know before the screeners hear of the kids that typically need support.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This is just an added data piece, right?
And the data's available to them all the time. They have logins to the system. They can go in at any time to look at data of a student. We were just looking at individual student data today when we were meeting with the ISD. And we were talking about kids who might need support. So we were looking at their ranks, and that's part of it too. If we're looking at students who may require special education services, we first look at where their percentile rank is. Because that's part of the criteria that we need to look at when we're deciding if we need to look at evaluating a student. So this is very beneficial when it comes to that too. And we use this for title services in the elementary and identifying students that way.
So I have to imagine, well, this includes all students, including ELL, so the reading would be especially difficult because they're starting behind. Our language.
And with reading, some of my newcomers, I did not make tests. And some of them, given their educational background, they could take a test at a lower grade level. And so then I track that, and whatever I do in the fall, I make sure they take that same test in the spring, so it's comparable data. I just wanna see if they grew in that area, so, yes.
All right, so this is looking at our math comparison. I like to see the transition when they're leaving the grade prior, so grade 6 end of the year is really their 5th grade test that they took before they left for summer. And then they're welcome back to fall testing to see on how much summer slide we had, what areas, typically in the summer slide, if they had it once, kind of forgot about it, we can hit that quick and get that fast bump ahead with it. So if you look at our 6th grade, we had a pretty dramatic shift. But the standards and the content and expectations from 5th grade to 6th grade do jump considerably. If you look at our 7th graders, at the end of their 6th grade year to the start of this year, they were pretty consistent in holding on to that knowledge that they had acquired, and very similar with our 8th grade as well. So looking at our math as we go through that part. When we're looking at our reading scores, you can see that reading, we hold very consistent as we go through. There is some summer slide, but not a huge amount like we see in mathematics. We see that also in our MSTEP testing, that there's a dramatic difference from fifth grade to sixth grade in our math scores, but our reading does hold pretty true. One of the things when we are digging deeper on kids, we wanna look at how have they done on previous tests, because one test one day, something bad could have happened in the morning, they could have had a fight with a sibling, something could have happened to a pet. They're not gonna test great. So if they're consistently, performing at a lower rate, those are the kids we really start to track and make sure, do we have eyes on them, do we have interventions in place, are we making sure we're meeting the needs of those kids to get them where they need to go? But kinda like Dave and Becky were sharing, it gives us strands that we can put that quick little refresher review, oh, that's what that, okay, and then we can launch them ahead. Again, to see what areas from one test to the next, do we see a little bit of a slide or weakening as we go through.
I think the other thing to mention, and I don't wanna forget to mention it, is that we are also using MyPath as an intervention for students. And so MyPath connects directly to NWEA. And so that program takes their NWEA score and all of their data information for reading and math. And then when they get on there, what they're doing is tailored for them and working on skills that they need work on. And so I know Troy's using it in middle school, we're using it in elementary. Are you using it for some of your students? Okay. And so it's very specific to where they scored low. So that helps a lot too.
And one of the new things that we've introduced in middle school, last year we started it with just our sixth graders to see how we could give them that help that they needed to fill in with interventions. Now, almost every middle schooler this year, at some point in time, will have an intervention math class. Not every kid needs maybe interventions to fill in where they are before, but it also can be used as an acceleration. So MyPath is great with assisting in if a kid is super strong across the board, but it can challenge them further in geometry and it can push them ahead. So it's not just a recovery, but it's a push ahead time. But every kid is getting that additional math support to meet them where they're at to help bridge that gap and to help our math scores. So we're excited to see where that data is. There are a few kids that don't have the opportunity because they're, mainly our choir, our band, and one other elective that it doesn't allow for that math time in there because they are in so many of the other extracurricular, but we have done our best to get, I'd say probably, like 98% of our students will at some point have that intervention block this year for them to help support them. So we're excited to see where those results are gonna lead in helping fill that gap. As you go to our next slide, we're gonna be, science. We're gonna look at our science. Historically, McBain has done very well in our sciences. It is good to see that we have the majority of our kids for every grade level is writing above. 75% of our kids are proficient in science on average. If you look at those charts, end of the year, beginning of the year, we don't see much summer slide as we go through, but science is a very strong thing for our district, which is cool to see, especially coming out of elementary, because it can be one of those that gets passed over or shuffled around, or we gotta cover math, we gotta cover reading, and those teachers are hammering it out and it's sticking with the kids, so that's a great thing to see. Now, as we look at our MSTEP and our PSAT, when we look at our sixth grade, they take MSTEP, and you can see what our grades are for McBain in sixth grade for English is just below the state and just above the ISD. In math, we're right there at the ISD and below the state again. This is the percent of students that are proficient or advanced. When you look at seventh grade, we start to accelerate. And eighth grade, we continue to launch ahead of the ISD and state in performance, especially in our mathematics. Is where we see the biggest boost as we go through and filling that gap. And then in our next slide, we can look at our historical data because it's each group of kids as they go through is different and their experiences they've had is different. So if you look at this chart, this is just McBain scores. Each color band follows the students year by year, so we can see if it's a group of kids, if it's an instruction, where we can start narrowing down. As you see there, that we have a historical dip in scores from 5th to 6th grade, making that transition. The ISD follows a similar trend, which is our next page. Comparatively, we see that dip continue. And the last page shows the state does not see that dip as consistently as we do in McBain or the ISD. So we continue to investigate ways to bridge that gap between 5th grade to 6th grade. One of the things we've noticed is our math curriculum that we use covers kind of all the 6th, 7th, 8th grade standards in 6th grade, kind of gives a dusting of them. 7th grade digs deeper on them, 8th grade really mastery. And that shows in our data, if you back up 2 slides. As you look at our McBain data, we really start making that growth. 6th grade, we do fall lower. 7th grade, it's kicking it up. In 8th grade, we're showing that mastery, and it's kind of across the board. You can see that student growth consistently increasing pretty dramatically. If you look at the light purple, lavender, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, really starting to show the growth. If you look at the yellow band, that group really kicked it up, but it's math and reading. So it's that spiral review that really sets it in for us to get us above, performing above the state consistently.
M-STEP scores for the elementary, we had 45% of our 3rd graders were proficient or advanced on that. So that was above ISD and state averages, which was good. And then for math, they were almost 50%, 48.2%, and above state and ISD averages as well. 4th grade, we had 50% of those kids, which was above ISD and state averages for reading, excuse me. And then math, that was 42.2%, a little bit closer. And the graph's a little tricky, the way that they're scaled. It looks like we're quite a bit up, but it was actually very close, only 3 percentage points between our average and the state. 5th grade reading, about 55% of our students were proficient in advance, which was great, and well above ISD and state averages. And in 5th grade math, they were 52%, which was 20 percentage points above ISD and state averages. So, and when we can kind of see as we go that the math is a struggle across the state. So I'm really pleased with our math scores in the elementary. Reading as well, but I'm really pleased with math. We have science. Again, well, we do pretty well in science. So about 47% on that, above ISD and state averages. And then social studies, we were a little below the state average, but above the ISD average on the whole. So across the board, we comparatively we did well last year. Oh, that's a little bit tricky to read. Sorry about that. When it was in front of me on my computer, it looked okay. That's a lot of colors and a lot of numbers. Just a snapshot of where our kids are right now with their achievement. This will be our math. And so we looked at these results in our data meetings that we had end of September, beginning of October. We were able to find areas of strength, areas of need. We were especially pleased with only 11% of our current 5th graders scoring in that low percentile, and same with 4th grade, only 15% scoring in that low percentile. Those were 2 shiny moments, and so there's a lot of work with our kids in the orange percentiles to move them to yellow and move yellows to green. And so our 2nd graders came in really well, and our kindergartners came in really high for math, so looking forward to working with them. And then our reading, kindergarten came in pretty high at the beginning of the year for reading, so we're pleased with that. I do want to talk about 2nd grade. They have the highest percentage in that lowest percentile, but there's a shift in 2nd grade. There's a shift of the assessment that they take and the way that we give the assessment. So in kindergarten and 1st grade for reading, they take the K2 reading band assessment in NWEA, and everything is read to them. There's some things that they can read on their own, but most everything is read to them. When they get into 2nd grade, then we want to see how are they doing with their own personal reading and being able to read passages and read text and answer questions. So it's not read to them. So then we end up seeing in the fall a lot of kids scoring a little bit lower because they're still working on that fluent reading and being able to read things on their own. So that's going to change. We look for that to change over the course of the year as we're still working on becoming fluent readers. So, but otherwise, fifth grade again, we were pleased with those results, and we'll just watch the numbers and the colors change as we go. And I think that's it.
That's it. Any questions?
Are you ready for your quiz?
Overall, the district is doing very well.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, with the effort that we're placing on attendance, is gonna continue to show in our scores as well. So, the teachers are working hard, support staff's working hard, definitely a team effort, parents are working hard at home, and it shows. So very proud of our kids and staff.
Does that encompass all the principal's reports?
Yes, anything you wanna update on
Anything
your
else?
reports?
Okay, all right. We will then move along to
Did you, Becky? Okay. You look like you
Don't wanna cut you short. Okay, all right. Committee reports. I think we probably had one committee report, and that's the sinking fund.
Yes. Sinking fund committee met, would you like me to save kind of that further down for sinking fund projects and?
You can just report,
Yep, so,
okay, why don't you just report on it now, I think.
okay, so our sinking fund committee met, discussing projects for next year. Our sinking fund, projection for next year is $1,051,396. We went over our list, kind of a 5-year plan of what we had for, during the bond and sinking fund, elections, and staying focused on that and the needs on that. Sinking fund committee came away with thoughts of looking at roof repair, replacement, I should say, roof replacement, and flooring, for the district as well, starting that rotation. We also talked about wooden door replacement. We have classrooms with some wooden doors that we'd like to replace with the hollow metal doors and metal frames for security. We also talked about our 800 megahertz radio testing, or boosters, I should say, not testing, that we need for law enforcement in the district, and that would go along with security as well. For that, and then talked also about, I did have asbestos testing done in the elementary school. We're in complete compliance, but if we start ripping up carpet and tile, we may not be. We did find some areas that they say are hot from the mastic in carpeting that's covering tiles. So something that we'll have to address. I'm waiting on the mitigation plan for that going forward for the carpeting. Carpeting, we talked about focusing more on the elementary school. We do have carpet in there that was placed in 1998. And down, and if you've seen the hallway there, that carpeting definitely needs to be replaced as well. Do have a visit scheduled with Cadillac schools coming up to look at the type of flooring that they put in their elementary schools. We kind of have some test areas of that flooring at our district as well that we've really been pleased with, the IQ Optima flooring. But that was, the committee meeting lasted about an hour. We had 2 board members there, and 2 community members as well as myself. And then Dennis wasn't able to make that meeting, but was able to touch base with him before and after the meeting. And that was the only committee that met this month.
So the bottom line of that is, of the $1 million we got available between the tech portion and the roof portion, really took about 70 to 75% of what we have available. I mean,
Yep.
Roofs are not very pretty, but they, and they're not very visible, but they need to be done. And that really takes a big chunk, like, it's almost $500,000 just for roof replacement.
Yeah, so that's potentially, right?
Yeah.
So because we may, once final expenditures come in, have to borrow some of our money from this past year
Mhm.
to help pay up for some of the track, and gym floor, because we knew we were kind of over budget with that. Right now, we have 46,110 square feet that we would have, of roofing that we would need to replace, so.
And then that would be expected to last like 30 years? What is the?
Yeah, 20 to 30.
Like 20 to 30,
Yeah.
just like a house then,
Right.
pretty much.
Some of our roofing that we have up there now is, if I remember correctly, I didn't bring the sheet with me, 88. There's a part, and then there's also mid-90s on there, mid to late 90s.
Yeah, and it was originally gonna be split up into 2 sections, but if we can do it at once, it would make more sense to do it at once.
Yeah, for sure.
And we had really, going back to year one, we had elevated the middle school project,
Right.
and kind of switched some years on that, because we wanted something, as far as the middle school project, we wanted something more visible to our voters, so that they could see that we are doing something. People don't see roofs, but they will see the new deal.
Right.
And so we kind of switched some priorities there.
Yep, so we have contracted with DK Design to do the roofing bids. Hoping that those will go out soon. I know they're here up on the roofs this past week. They're double checking some things, hoping that get that out to bid here soon. What they're saying is that the roofing cost, the bids are coming in cheaper than what they have in the past or the past year. So hopefully that will continue.
Any questions on the sinking fund bidding, or?
Just because we're going out to bids doesn't mean we have to accept the bids either.
Right.
So.
Okay, moving on to MESB update, I'll handle that. Had a board meeting on the 27th of September. That was kind of, large portion of that was, we received our annual audit report. MESB is in very, very good financial situation, so it was a good audit report. I wanted to share with you, I don't know if I've ever really read this, but for whatever it's worth, I wanted to share what the MESB's mission statement says, and also what their vision statement is. The mission statement for MESB is to provide high-quality educational leadership services for all Michigan boards of education, and to advocate for an equitable and exceptional public education that leads to improved outcomes for all students. That's the mission of MESB. The vision statement is to have a well-governed, effective public school for every Michigan student. So, for whatever word, that's the mission of MESB. And I also wanted to share just a couple of the goals that, there's about 5 strategic goals for the upcoming year for MESB. I'm only gonna share a couple of them. One has to do with kind of a payback situation. MESB has been around for 75 years. So for this coming year, they're offering $750 free services to every district in the state, basically tied to education. So we will have $750 available to us to attend educational sessions, different services that they offer. We will have $750 available to us, in that type of thing, just to celebrate and also to kind of send a message, because they're very financially sound, and this will help send a message that we're sharing some of our wealth. The other thing, which maybe is a little bit more meaningful, at least to me anyway, is there was a lot of emphasis about how do we reach out to more districts. What kind of services do they need? How can we reach out to them? They're looking at districts, at what services have they used, what haven't they used, that type of thing, and trying to figure out how they can reach out more to more districts. It kind of gets into the urban versus rural district thing. The usage of services by small rural districts is very, very low and or non-existent. And there's lots of reasons for that. And I've been involved in a lot of conversations about how they can serve the small rural northern Michigan district better than what they do now. We're not being intentionally ignored, but there is a difference between the participation of the larger urban districts and the northern districts, and there's lots of reasons for that. But they're really putting forth an effort to say, hey, how can we reach out more to the northern rural districts, and what does that look like? So hopefully that will be meaningful. I don't know what it's really gonna turn out to be, but there's at least talk. And I try to keep it on the front burner about how can we serve districts to the north more than, Scott and I talked about the nature of some of those state organizations is that, like it or not, it's geared toward the larger urban areas. That's just fact, you know, and how we can maybe change some of the mentality to include more. Anyway, that's one of my personal goals, and that's one of the goals of the organization for this year. So I'm going to be attending the fall conference next week, I think, 23rd. So I'll be in Lansing for the fall conference, and so hopefully we'll have some more to report back after that's done. So that's kind of my update on MESB. Any questions about MESB or concerns? All right. Item 7.
Right?
Yep.
31 AA mental health. You guys already spoiled my surprise. But they are increasing the amount of money. Still not to where it was, but it sure does beat $17 a student. So thankful for that. If you guys have any thoughts of what to do with the 31 AA money, please let me know. I just thought of this too, though. We can take the sinking or the return to learn plan and continuity of learning off our website and everything.
Yes, we can ask for 3 years.
Yeah, so we're making progress. So it's taken us 4 years, but we're there. So, good, but yes, so happy with that. Hopefully, as Liz said, they'll keep putting more money into that. So, because we are using it for supports for our kids. So.
Good. Item B, sinking fund projects, I think we probably pretty much got that covered.
Anyone have any comments on that, or?
No? You know, I would encourage anybody, I mean, we had 2 board members on the committee and 2 community people, but if other board members or any other people have ideas or preferences or pet things they'd like to see addressed that we could do with the sinking fund, definitely make it, let it be known. The more ideas we have, the better off we're gonna do. We got 10 years of that coming, so.
We do have a list.
Yes, we have a long list already.
But no, we welcome those because there are times where people will mention something, it's like, oh, never even considered that. So, even if it's not allowed on the sinking fund dollars, I mean, it's good to have that on the list because we can look at other things.
So if you're around here and see something, by all means, let it be known.
Things look nice.
Yeah, I was saying, but also if you see things nice,
Yes.
they can look good.
Compliments on the middle school floor, that whole room looks bigger and it's pretty nice.
Looks nice, for sure. You know, and it's amazing how the kids are treating it and respecting it as well. Boots are coming off, they're not wearing the boots in the gyms.
That's good.
They're wearing tennis shoes when they go in the gym class, and it's just nice.
It's good. All right, moving on to item 8, action items. We have a resignation from Hannah Feaster, and that to parapro, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Motion?
Support.
Motion been made and supported to accept the resignation of Hannah Feaster. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. We also have a resignation communication from Jamie Zach, and I think she was also a parapro?
Correct.
Okay.
Motion?
Support.
Okay, motion made and supported to accept that resignation. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a hire recommendation for Trina Vandeventer. Hire recommendation. What would that position be?
Middle school parapro.
Middle school parapro?
Yep.
Okay.
Motion?
Support.
Okay, motion made, supported to approve the hire of Trina Vandeventer. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. Item D, one-time off-schedule payment for food service workers. Scott, if you want to fill us in on that?
Yeah, so this would be part of our spend down plan. It's encouraged by the Department of Education for our employees that are working food service, to keep food service employees. But also, I mean, they did an excellent job this summer providing meals. I did put it in my board update. I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but of how many meals they served this summer. And it's a great service for our community and for our kids, but also for our surrounding communities. We had other communities to receive that. It just gives them a thank you, and I want people to keep coming and working in the summer to provide the service. So,
9,553 breakfast and lunches.
Wow,
this summer.
that's a lot.
That's awesome.
It's really
That's a lot.
The state did come in and observe our food service as well this summer, our summer feeding program. And Tammy Eisinga has been asked to sit on a panel. They were so impressed with her system and how she made it work. And so she'll be sitting on a panel for the state at one of their conferences. So, really cool.
Motion for that?
Support.
Motion made, supported to approve that payment, and that is a $500.
Correct.
I don't know if that was in the notes or not.
Yes,
so.
it is.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. Door replacement bids.
Yep, so I put in 2 bids in there, one from City Glass and one from Gerber Construction for replacement of 13 doors. I did find another door actually that escaped me initially. But replacing those classroom doors that are wooden, and it just adds to security with that in metal frames. My hopes would be that if approved, that this is something that we could accomplish over Christmas break. That would help us alleviate being in the way during the any renovations we have going on this summer. Ken, I believe you said that those doors were on the
Yes,
classrooms.
I thought you were gonna bring that up.
Yeah. When you were in
They were
school.
old when I was here, so.
Well, they were on the sinking fund, but Ken and I looked at those after the meeting, and so that needs to be a priority.
Yeah, they're
So
pretty
can I
bad.
ask a question? Would we consider the doors, I can't remember if I read this, Scott, is it could that be part of a safety security thing too?
It would be school
Oh, most
security,
definitely, I
yeah.
think.
So could you, the 31 AA funds or no?
Potentially,
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot,
No,
I'm
no.
just thinking out
No,
loud, kind of.
potentially.
Okay.
Yes, it can be, and also,
Yeah, I just wondered, we, talk about security, and I thought you had mentioned that in one of your
yeah,
notes.
and it also can be under sinking funds as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But no, yes, absolutely, it can be under 31AA. It might even be able to be under 31A too. So we do have the funding, just what pool we're gonna take it
Sure.
from.
Yep.
What we're gonna have. I would agree with Doug and Ken, and it is a priority.
Okay,
Did anybody make that motion?
motion.
Support.
Motion made, supported to approve the door replacement bid from City Glass, and that looks like it's about roughly $38,000 total in that range. So, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. Item F, Aaron Roby resignation from an elementary parapro position.
Motion.
Support.
Okay, motion made, supported to accept the resignation of Aaron Roby. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion is also carried.
So we're doing some looking into why we're losing so many parents.
Yeah, and some of it was higher wages, and the others were personal, that they had to, so. But yes, we are looking into it. We had 2 that went over to a different place of employment, same position, just more hours and benefits.
Yeah, we've had a fair amount of turnover in that, but I think very little of it has been dissatisfaction.
Well, I don't think
if you would
anybody
say.
even left was dissatisfied.
No.
No, it's not hasn't been a controversial type separation, I don't think. Okay, going on to item 9, public comment. I would think we're still at none there. And moving on to the board roundtable. Anybody have anything they'd like to offer? Denny?
I'm good.
Doug?
I'm good.
Karen? Matt?
Good, thanks.
Becky?
Good.
All right, I'm good too. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support?
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
As far as the roof bids and stuff, we used to bid on, so.
Yeah.